Now, by the time Nadine Dorries resigned as an MP earlier this year, she was known as one of Boris Johnson's closest allies, having worked her way to Culture Secretary within his cabinet.
And now she's written a book full of explosive claims about her time in Westminster, what she calls the plot to force the former Prime Minister out of Number 10. And Nadine Dorries joins us now. Very good morning to you.
Good morning.
If someone is sat at home and they're thinking, I voted in general elections and maybe I'm a member of the Conservative Party and I think I have had a handle on, appointing people and knowing what goes on in this world of ours, what do they need to know that you have found out?
So I'd say, first of all, your introduction, you said it's about my time in Westminster. Actually, it's not at all about my time in Westminster. In fact, my photograph isn't even on the jacket of the book because it's about the Conservative Party over the past 20 years. What I began to do, Boris Johnson was the 5th Conservative Prime Minister or party leader to have either been forced into the position of having to resign unwillingly or abruptly having to resign. And there was kind of an alarm bell went off, which was like, hang on a second, something's not quite right here. We've had 5 of our most recent leaders and prime ministers who've just had to go without the people, the Conservative voters that might be listening, or the Conservative Party members having any say whatsoever. And so I began this process of looking into how is this happening? And what I discovered was disturbing, to say the least. And I think, someone described it to me yesterday as there being a bomb on every page. And I think there is, because this is stuff which people just don't know. And why does it matter? Why does it matter? Because you might think, well, it's the Conservative Party, isn't it? Well, the Conservative Party spends more years in power than any other party. And it matters because what it highlights is a complete deficit of democracy. And it also shows that actually nothing happens by accident in either government or at the top of my party. Everything is decided by a quite small group of men who decide who will be an MP, who will be a minister, when that minister's career will crash by pulling various levers, who will be Prime Minister and how long they will remain Prime Minister. And of course, Conservative Party voters and people who go to the ballot box think their vote matters. It doesn't matter at all because this stuff is all pre-decided.
Did you have any idea that there was this group of men, this small group of men, you say, who were, in your words, kind of controlling who stays, who remains, whilst you were an MP and whilst you became an MP?
Well, there's a story in the book about how I put an advice note into the Prime Minister's red box for him to sign off overnight, and how I received a telephone call very early the following morning from someone who, obviously, identity I have to protect within Number 10, to say to me, you need to know that your advice note from a Secretary of State to the Prime Minister in his red box has been altered overnight.
But that would have been done by one person. I suppose what I'm asking is, did you know that this machination, you call it the movement, existed behind the Conservative Party?
That set alarm bells off for me. I'm elected, I'm appointed by the elected Prime Minister. Who is it who has interfered with my advice note in the Prime Minister's red box? What I discovered by investigating that was that this process has been going on right back to the time of Ian Duncan Smith. These men have been involved in the party since the late 1990s, and at every stage, whether it's Theresa May, David Cameron, Ian Duncan Smith, whoever it is, Liz Truss, she's the only person that actually didn't have any of them close to her because she knew about them. There are, this group always have 2 or 3 of them absolutely right at the heart of Number 10 next to. So,
because you don't name all of them.
I can't name all of them because the libel laws in this country mean that I had to circumnavigate them by, in some cases, it would have just meant the book was delayed for a bit. I could have named them, but it would have meant the book wouldn't have been out for another 6 months because
Isn't it more important to name them so that we know the full picture?
Most of them, some of them are named. Michael Gove, Dominic Cummings, as I've said, Cummings is Gove and Gove is Cummings. They've worked together side by side for well over 20 years. Dougie Smith is, you will only find one photograph on the internet of Dougie Smith. He is right now at Rishi's right-hand side as his main advisor. This is the man who used to run the Fever sex parties, who has quite a notorious, well-known background. But you won't hear anybody talk about Dougie Smith. When I ask people about Dougie Smith, they would say to me, I don't want to talk about him, and put their hand over my phone. And then when I switched the phone off, they weren't being recorded, they would tell me things. But, you know, this is a man people are scared of in government, and Rishi Sunak doesn't make a decision, a policy decision or an appointment without first clearing it with Dougie Smith.
Can you understand it when people maybe have a bit of a problem with the fact that, for example, for those people who haven't seen the book or don't know about it, you name someone, you call them Dr. No.
Yeah.
As in the Bond movies.
I wish I didn't have to, but I had to.
Who's sort of at the top of this pile of influential people. For example, you say Dr. No loves violence. He's a bad man with an evil mind and he's chopped the head off someone's pet rabbit.
Yeah, that's a story. So can I just say as well that most of the things that I've written in the book, people are attributing to me. It's actually to other people. So that story was actually told to me by a number of people. And I even spoke to, you know, a journalist who'd investigated it at the time, 20 years ago. But that was a pretty macabre situation. He actually, and, you know, I think it was in the papers at the weekend, the then young boy, 8-year-old, now adult, you know, attested, yes, this happened. So he chopped up a rabbit from an ex-girlfriend, her little brother's pet rabbit, into 4 and nailed it to the front door for him to find when he got home from school. OK,
so you paint this picture of this person who has unbelievable influence at the top of the party you were part of. Why not name him? Just fundamentally, why not name him?
So this book has been through... it's probably the most legal book since Spycatcher. It's not only been through my own publishers, lawyers, it's been through external counsel, and for it to be serialised in the Daily Mail, it had to go through the Daily Mail group lawyers as well. And the issue was that if I'd named him, because of who he is and the way he behaves, he probably would have, and the power that he has. I mean, this group of men have influence and money and power.
Presumably you were going to say he was going to sue.
No, I don't think he would have sued. I think what we think he would have probably done is put an injunction in the book, and that would have delayed publication by about 6 months, and I wanted to get the book out.
But what you've said in the book is true, is it not?
It is
true. So wherein lies the risk?
Well, you know, I think possibly that lawyers and barristers are very much err to the side of caution. That was my argument, Charlie. Exactly what you're saying to me, I was saying to them. And there was some strong discussions. My argument was, but this is true, why can't we do it? But I can absolutely understand why my publishers felt that they didn't want to take the risk of the book being delayed by an injunction. It wouldn't have gone through an injunction, you know, it would have passed at the other end, but we would have been looking at 6 to 9 months delayed publication.
There's been reaction to your book. Michael Gove has said you're an excellent fiction writer, for example. You've seen the criticism.
Well, I knew that. I was told by somebody in Number 10 a number of weeks ago, the attack lines being prepared are, you know, I've sold 3 million novels, you're a fiction writer, that you're a conspiracy theorist, that, you know, that I've heard all this. But it isn't my story. There's not very little of that is me in that book. It's other people's stories.
You're no longer a Conservative MP. You're still a member of the Conservative Party.
Yeah.
So what was the intention in writing this book? You say you've exposed this small group, the movement, as you call it. You've described them as individuals totally in control of a weak party, using dark arts to ensure their writ goes a lot further than it otherwise would during more peaceful times. Is there a message? What message are you saying to potential Conservative voters? Because why would you vote for a party that seems not in control of its own agenda?
And I completely understand that. And I think my motivation behind writing the book was I've been in Westminster for 25 years. I think where I come from was I was a nurse in the NHS for 10 years before that, and then a businesswoman for 10 years. So kind of like I was a person I didn't go straight into politics. I've had another life. And I think coming from that other life into politics, being there for 25 years, and not knowing that this group of men existed, or that they had the power, or the connections, or the ability that they have, really, really grated with me. And I think people need to know.
And knowing that now, would you say to someone who was considering today to vote for the Conservatives that they would be voting for a party that is transparent and is in charge of its own agenda?
So what I would like to see, you know, like from the background that I come from, which is like one of the most deprived council estates in the country, in Anfield in Liverpool, for people like me, when you go to the ballot box, you think your vote counts. And there are people who... Boris Johnson... You know, this book should have been the plot, the assassination of Boris Johnson and 4 other names after his. But I didn't know at the time that, you know, this picture was much bigger.
Not getting
when
whether
you go
you'd
to the
say.
ballot box, you need to know.
So now
that
you
your
know.
vote counts.
Now you know. Would a potential Conservative voter be voting for a party that is in charge of its own agenda?
So I'd like to see people like Dougie Smith. I'd like before they do, and we've got time to the general election, I'd like to see absolute confirmation that people like Dougie Smith, Michael Gove, Dominic Cummings, and the others are no longer right at the centre of number 10, controlling government and the party.
If they are?
Well, if they are, I won't be voting for the party, and I would urge anyone else not to either, because this group of men have caused chaos. Nothing that's happened to any individual minister or prime minister over a number of years, none of it has been by accident. It has all been by design. And so I would like to see them gone before I'd say to anybody, vote Conservative.
You have been in cabinet with Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak, of course, simultaneously. There's a line in the book which talking about Rishi Sunak, and you're looking across the table at him. You say, he saw me watching him, and he gave me a fixed, unnatural grin, bleached dental white of his teeth, I could see. Compare and contrast those 2 men for us, because Boris Johnson is now saying that Rishi Sunak is will lose the Conservative Party the next election.
Well, I think what Boris said, which was actually the comments in the book which have been lifted into the Times today, he said those comments. It was the Sunday after the local election results, when we just had, I think, probably our 2nd biggest loss of council seats ever, and that was going from a very low base the year before previously. So I understand his comments, and he's absolutely right. You know, I think, are we 25 points behind today? Was the Queen's speech, you know, riveting? Were there bills and policies in that King's speech? I've done a lot of Queen's speeches, sorry. Were there policies in that King's speech that are going to turn the country around, that are going to ignite people to go out and vote for us? You know, when Boris Johnson was elected in 2019, he had an 80-seat majority. He got a bigger vote share than Tony Blair did in 97. People were inspired to go out and vote for him and for the party. Is that King's speech? Is what we're doing now going to ignite people? Does the government need a kick in the pants, as Boris Johnson said? It absolutely does. And the one thing I would say from Boris's comments that have been lifted from the book are that that's the kind of leadership people want to see. Someone who is articulating what it is we need to do, where it is we need to take the country as a party, and how we need to move forward. And that just isn't happening now. You've got to give people something to vote for.
Boris Johnson broke lockdown rules, didn't he?
Well, he got fined for a cake coming into his office with Rishi Sunak. They both were.
But he did break lockdown rules, didn't he? And was fined for it.
As I say, you know, the Met Police, who were the highest authority to investigate it, fined both him and Rishi Sunak, him for being sat at his desk while people walked in. And I think the only reason, actually, that happened was because it changed the nature of what was a meeting to an event, because there was a birthday cake.
But you were shaking your head when I put that fact to you, that he broke lockdown rules and was fined. You were shaking your head as if to say, well, he wasn't.
Look, Boris Johnson is a man who has never attended, you know, this party gate. He never attended a single party in number 10. And I think the evidence he has given to the Privileges Committee...
Can I just point out the picture with this picture, for example?
That's a room that he walked into to give a thank you, which was socially distanced,
while he's holding a drink,
thank you to a member of staff who was leaving. Yeah, well, you know, he is holding... Somebody put a drink on the table, he picked it up and said, thank you for all the work that you've done over the past year in number 10 during horrendous working conditions and time. Good luck on your next move. That was it. You know, Keir Starmer was in Durham having beers and curries and a room.
Were you in that room when that happened?
No.
You were always, I think it's fair to say, pretty outspoken when you were culture minister and when you were in government. And one of our stories, one of the things we're looking at today is Suella Braverman's comments, Home Secretary.
I'm not an MP anymore. No,
I know you're not.
Out of that.
I know you're not, but you're a member of the Conservative Party, OK? And what you will see, I think is fair to say, is divisions and lines being drawn and undermining, perhaps, of the Prime Minister. When you look at this in the round and the divisions, do you think it's appropriate to cause this discomfort for the Prime Minister? Because as our chief political correspondent was saying, there are ministers now who are saying we are sick of having to be asked about whether we agree with Suella Braverman's comments, inflammatory comments at this moment in time. Do you think that's helpful in the run-up to an election? From any minister?
No, of course it's not. And I think what Suella's probably doing is she doesn't want to leave her post, does she? And everyone can see that we're 25 point. Everyone can see what's happening, and the competition is on now for who is going to be the leader of the opposition. That's what's happening within the Conservative Party right now. Who is going to be the leader of the opposition? And I think what Suella Braverman wants is to be sacked from cabinet. So that kind of gives her a status of, you know, I've been sacked for being honest and for saying what the right on the party feel. He's going to sack me. That will make me a hero. That will make me a martyr. And that will rally people behind us. I think that's what we're seeing happening.
Has she got the support of the movement that you described?
Oh, absolutely not, no. No, she doesn't, no. Kemi Badenoch is the person they've been preparing for years. So she is very close friends with Dougie Smith and other people that I've mentioned, and she's the one that they've been grooming to take over for a number of years now.
Thank you for your time this morning. Good to see you here this morning.
You're welcome. Great to be here. Is this going to go viral, Charlie? Or...
Well, only the internet can decide that.
You tell me. Is there something else you want to say?
Well, I prefer this one than the Zoom call last time.
How was that?
Well, how was what?
How was that moment you brought it back up again?
So, you know, the thing I've never told you is that the first question you asked me was, have you spoken to the Prime Minister? I'd literally 30 seconds before put the phone down on him, and I thought you'd heard me. So that's what freaked me out that time.
You thought we'd overheard your conversation?
Yeah. So when you said, have you spoken to the Prime Minister, I was like, what? Has he just heard me? I just put the phone down with the mics on. So that's what happened.
Well, you know what I'm going to have to ask now, Nadine, don't you? What was the nature of that? What was the nature of that conversation that day that you did not want to talk about?
He was saying to me, I hear you're about to do breakfast TV. Do not say anything to Charlie State. That's what he said.
Nadine Dorries, thank you for joining us on The Safer.
You're
this
welcome.
morning.
Thank you for having me.
The political assassination of Boris Johnson by Nadine Dorries is published today.